morning and welcome to Rising. We have a jam-packed, action-packed show for you today. Lots of news to catch up on from over the weekend. How was your vacation, Briahna?
It was good. I think we were saying before the show, regret not realizing Memorial Day was coming and actually taking a trip somewhere else, but I still managed to have a good staycation.
Yes.
How about you?
Same. Myself as well. I was missing family a little bit, but I'm going to see my family later next month, so I'm excited for that. But let's get to the big news. So much to talk about from over the weekend. One of those things taking place was my own party, the Libertarian Party's National Convention, taking place over the weekend. We now have a presidential candidate. The party nominated Chase Oliver, a former Georgia State Senate candidate, to be the party's presidential nominee. Now, Oliver's participation in the 2022 Georgia Senate race helped force a runoff between Republican challenger Herschel Walker and incumbent Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock, with Warnock ultimately winning. You probably remember that. Oliver is an anti-war activist who has called for an end to the violence in Gaza and describes it as a genocide. He also supports free speech, opposes government COVID mandates, and self-describes as armed and gay. Let's watch some of his remarks.
We are going to be hitting the campaign trail hard and fast as soon as we can. And absolutely, we're going to be fighting to be a contrast to the elitists that are Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and yes, even Robert Kennedy.
Now, Oliver was not the only presidential candidate to participate in the Libertarian Convention. Both Donald Trump and RFK Jr. also spoke at the event. RFK Jr.'s speech focused on the Bill of Rights and his points of agreement with libertarians and was well received. Trump, on the other hand, was continuously booed by the crowd, a rare occurrence for the Donald, who is accustomed to raucous applause at his rallies. The crowd was especially hostile to Trump when he asked for their vote. Let's take a look.
Think of this. First time in U.S. history that a presidential candidate of a rival party will address the convention of a party that is presumably gathering to nominate its own candidate. Now I think you should nominate me or at least vote for me, and we should win together. You heard those words. Nominate me or vote. Vote for me.
Trump did receive some applause when he promised to include a libertarian in his cabinet and when he promised to free Ross Ulbricht, who's currently serving a life sentence for having operated Silk Road, a black market website that facilitated the sale of illegal drugs. Many libertarians believe his prosecution, trial, and imprisonment was a profound miscarriage of justice. So interesting stuff happening at this convention. The Trump stuff was the headline for a lot in the mainstream media taking notice. There had been some concerns. Remember, Trump and RFK Jr. both being invited to speak, and Biden was invited to speak as well, just declined. I know some people, even some of my colleagues at Reason, other libertarian-minded people, really did not like the idea of the candidates of a non-libertarian party speaking at the convention, and I think we're worried that maybe the media might mistake the Libertarian Party as like a pro-Trump gathering because it was hosting Trump. But I think the sustained, constant booing of Trump really dispelled that notion. Yeah. He is not someone who, he just doesn't do events where he is likely to be booed very often. There was when he would attack Joe Biden, there'd be people in the crowd say, "Well, you're just as bad." It was really thanks but no thanks kind of attitude that I appreciated and got a lot of notice.
Yeah, I do think in many respects it made both sides look like they had something that is on very short supply in American politics, which is some degree of ideological consistency and integrity. So libertarians in this conference were one of the few, if only, people who have really been willing to thumb their nose at Trump to his face. Now, obviously, liberals loathe Trump, but rarely are they in a scenario where they're able to, to his face jeer and boo, because he tends to seek out more complimentary audiences. And I do wonder if he thought that he was going to have more traction in this libertarian space than he ultimately did. But, there were hints at this for a while, right? We saw how libertarians, at least the people who are controlling the libertarian Twitter account, pushed back against the idea that RFK was going to have a cakewalk to a nomination, or that he wouldn't get scrutiny for some of his policies that are very much not ideologically aligned with the libertarian agenda, whether it's his environmental policies, his support of student debt cancellation, or whatever it is. And so it is frankly nice. It's refreshing to see that there is a group who isn't willing just to pander to power in the way that so many other groups would. And on the other hand, it was kind of nice to see Donald Trump take his licks and say, well, this is what I believe. I'm not actually a libertarian.
Sure.
But hey, he was making a pitch that went along the lines of, hey, if you want to actually have power in more than 3% of the vote for me. At least you'll get some of what you like. And, you know, that's a very sort of a vote blue no matter who, or vote red instead.
To vote red or end up dead.
Right? Argument, but like he stood his ground, and so there was something frankly kind of refreshing about it, no matter what side you sort of politically align with.
Absolutely. And you can't imagine, you know, Joe Biden is unwilling to do media interviews with like, not even with hostile media, but with media that would be at all doing some scrutiny of his policies. So I do credit Trump for being willing to go in there. My understanding of the backstory is that the Trump campaign actually reached out and really did want to do a speech at the convention, and then the party decided, okay, well, that's fine, but then we're going to invite the other candidates as well.
Do you think he was naive about the kind of reception?
I don't know who advised him to do this, but again, I don't think it's a ding, because it can be courageous to want to go into not necessarily friendly territory and engage with them and stress areas where there is common agreement. There were a lot of people happy that he said he would do something about Ross Ulbricht. Of course, the crowd also cares. There were a lot of signs for free Assange, that kind of stuff. Trump could have done something about that, but didn't. RFK Jr. vowed to, as president, free Assange, and I think, like, you know, build a statue to Snowden and all of that stuff. That stuff was well received. So I think the Libertarians were generally glad to have these other candidates at least talking about some of their issues. Overall, I was very happy with how the convention turned out. I'm a fan of Chase Oliver. We'll probably get him on the show in the coming days and weeks. I think there's a lot about him you'd like, frankly. He's very vocal on Israel issue, need to not fund Israel. He does not shy about calling it a genocide. There has been a little bit of a factional division in the Libertarian Party over the last couple of years. The group that took over the Libertarian Party since the last election, the Mises Caucus, is, I don't think I really disagree with them on policies very much, but they're very, they have a aggressive comm strategy, I would say, and they're a little bit more, I think they're culturally more conservative, or they feel more ties to the right, at least on cultural and social issues. So they did not, Chase Oliver was not their candidate.
Because he is gay, or?
I don't think they would say they have an opposition to him being gay, but he's not as culturally, you know, is not worked up about transgender issues. He was, I think, early in the pandemic, like there are photos of him, you know, masking and saying we should model good social distancing. You know, not saying any of that should be mandatory, which is really what matters from a libertarian standpoint.
Are, let's say, trans issues a big part of libertarian push politically, given that it does seem to be a kind of
I would say no,
individual
but
choice
this faction
issue
of the party is more in line with, you know, what you would see out of conservative online media, or at least I think sees the gateway, the best way to promote the Libertarian Party is to be more active on places like the Tim Pool Show, or on Tucker Carlson, or with Megyn Kelly, or whatever, where you talk about those issues a lot. So it's kind of a different comm strategy ultimately. So their candidate lost to Chase Oliver. Angela McArdle, the leader of the party, who we've had on the show, is part of the Mises Caucus faction. So she was reelected. So the caucus did retain a lot of leadership positions, but the candidate went to outside the faction. So in some ways, it's like both sides got something out of this, and nobody is totally happy about it, but I thought it was fine.
It is interesting that after seeming to court the Libertarian Party more so than others, at least on social media, RFK Jr. seems to be just a kind of blip in the news cycle about this conference. We described him as being received positively, or at least more positively than Donald Trump. Why do you think that he wasn't taken more seriously as a candidate, given that there are some advantages to having someone with name recognition and a platform like he has, carrying the Libertarian banner?
Yeah, there were obviously elements of the party who were very keen on him. Angela McArdle, I think, made no secret of that she thought it would be a major advantage to have someone with his name recognition who was moving in a libertarian direction on so many issues that are very important to her and are important to me, frankly, on COVID. But a lot of the other stuff was going to end up being a deal breaker for some of the rank and file. And at the end of the day, you have to, if you really want the nomination, you have to, it's like a delegate system. You have to have delegates from the various states who are going to put your name forward. It's like I think there were 7 rounds of voting where like the first round there are 12 candidates. candidates and they eliminate the lowest however many, and then those people's delegates have to go to, it's like that kind of system.
Do you have a sense of how quickly Trump got nixed?
Well, so Trump wasn't even, I think there was like one delegate for him. There was like a handful for, I mean, there was as many delegates for Trump as there was for like Courtney Love. Like there was, there were some joke votes.
Oh, I was going to say, was she really a candidate?
No, there were joke votes.
I see the vision. I see the vision, Courtney. Don't let them hold you back.
So it was on the 7th ballot, though. Chase got it. So we're excited to have a candidate finally, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more from him very soon.
All right, stick around. I have a big new raider coming up next. Stay tuned.